Talks. I'm Lyndon Dixon, joined today by Shane Watson. Shane, how are you getting on, mate?
Well, good man. How you getting on?
Yeah, not too bad. Firstly, just want to address the elephant in the room. Been a mental couple of days in boxing. What's your take on the whole Amir Khan situation at the minute?
It's a bit of a difficult one because until you know everything, I can't act like I'm a drug expert because I'm not. But I've done a bit of research the last few days on that drug in question. Listen, I've known Amir Khan for a long time. I've known Amir since I was about 17, 18 years old, and I'm now 28. So I've known him for a long time. And I spent a fair bit of time with him over the years. And this is not to be offensive to Amir Khan at all, but he isn't the brightest man in the world, right? And like, without like again being offensive, but I don't think he would know how to take a ped and how it would really improve his performance. I just don't think he would
Mm,
know how to do it. He wouldn't know how to do it for like a specific time to flush out these systems of that. And that drug specifically that he's done, um, you usually take that over a long period of time,
mm,
from what I've read. And he hasn't failed any other tests, and he's been getting tested rigorously since he was 17, 16 years old.
mm,
It'd be very strange for him to take a drug like that at
mm.
the very end of his career, where it ain't actually going to help him at all because it's something you've got to take for a prolonged period of time. So I just don't believe he's done it intentionally, and the amount that is so small. Now, listen, you fail a drug test, you fail a drug test, and at the end of the day, there should always be consequences for that. So I'm not saying that he should get off lightly. I'm not saying he
Mm.
shouldn't be fined. I'm not saying he shouldn't uh be banned. I'm just saying that I'm not going to hate on him and let it tarnish his legacy from my point of
Mm.
view because the amount is so small. And UCAD have said he didn't do it intentionally. Now, UCAD will know a lot more about drug testing than I will. So I
Yeah.
can only go off what they've said. So they do it for a living. It's what they do every single day. They would have seen tons of cases like this before, I imagine. So I'd have to just go off what they say. But knowing Amir as well, I can't see him doing something like that intentionally, especially at this age and the end of his career. And the thing is, like, when other people fail drug tests, you can kind of then see why they failed drug tests.
Mm.
Like whether it's a quick change, whether they've gone from being non-punchers to big punchers, whether they've physically grown a lot in a short
Mm.
space of time. Amir Khan, without being horrible, he actually looked worse,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
in his last few fights than what he had done before. So, and he hadn't grown physically. He hadn't just become a devastating puncher.
Mm.
None of that stuff. Um, so I struggle to see how, like, it's not like he looks like someone that's just been on peds and stuff like that at all.
Mm.
Like, he just looks. None of it really adds up. I feel like he's either been given something he didn't know, or it's something so minute. He's it's been in something that he's had or whatnot. I don't think he's done that intentionally. It's just not in his nature to be that kind of a guy.
Mm. But you mentioned it earlier on there. But do you think that tarnishes his legacy? Because people online are now criticising him, saying, has he been doing it his whole career? But I personally agree with you. I don't think he has. But do you think now that it's come out that he's tested positive, do you think that does tarnish his legacy slightly?
I guess it always tarnishes it slightly. It's a very negative thing to come out, and it's big news for the moment, and it's even worse time because we're going through so much with the Conor Ben situation. Everyone's still talking about it and making a big deal of it.
Mm.
It now kind of flicks the light onto him. But in reality, and if we're being honest, what he's done is nowhere near as bad as Conor Ben. Number one, it's one
Yeah.
test. Number two, do you know what? You have to get like you shouldn't even give credit for this, but this is a sad day and world we live in now. Like he didn't run away. He
Mm.
didn't give up his license. He stood there, took it, accepted the ban, and he's not run away and not done interviews. He's been on Talksport.
Yeah.
I think he was on Sky Sports the other day. I think, and he's done numerous other interviews and stuff. And he's come out and said stuff on social media. He hasn't run to Australia across the other side of the world and just lived a secret life or a private life. Like he's faced it straight away, and he said what he believes has happened. Like so, it's difficult to really like like resent him for it, kind
Yeah,
of thing. I guess
yeah,
he's handled it in the right way since. He's appealed it. He's had his case heard. They don't think he's done it intentionally because of strict liability. You have to be banned for a minimum of 2 years, and they banned him for the minimum, which
mhm,
shows you probably even more so how they don't think he intentionally did it, because they could have given him a 4 year ban, but they didn't. Not
mm,
that it matters because he's retired anyway, but just for the from the punishment point of view, they obviously don't think he's done it intentionally. Like they said, they haven't anyway. So um, I hope in the long term, maybe more can come out and more evidence can be given just to help clear his name, or if not, to tarnish his name. Because if he has done it intentionally, then that's what he deserves. Um, but I don't believe he has, and hopefully more will come out and lie, and
mm,
hopefully we can find out more what's happened with the communication between the board and UK and stuff as well. But do you know what? A lot of people who've been commenting on this situation the last few days don't really understand how different um different testing companies work, right? Because people going, well, what about VADA? They did this to kind of bench way. Yeah, VADA's job is to report to the promoter. The promoter pays VADA. It's a very different situation. UCAD is a government-funded body, well, not body, sorry, testing agency that the board use to test their athletes. So it's a very different process. UCAD has got no obligation to go to the promoter and report a failed drug test.
mm,
What UCAD does have is an obligation to report the failed drug test to the board, and then it would be the board's responsibility to then report to the promoter. But you can't do that while there's a hearing process going on, because at this moment in time, if that hearing process is cleared, a little bit like what happened with Dillian White and Oscar Rivas,
mm,
then they are not guilty of taking performance enhancing drugs. So then imagine it got leaked to the press that he had, and he hadn't actually done it, and then you tarnish his legacy, but he was actually innocent the whole
yeah,
time. So that is why they can't do it. Yeah, and people
mm,
need to understand that, because people going in on a board and going in other people, it's actually not their fault, because you have to wait for a case to be heard, and sometimes this takes a long time. You first of all, you'll get the failed drugs test out of the way, then you've got to notify the person who's failed the drug test. Then you're notifying legal teams,
mm,
and then you've got to wait for a case to be heard when all relevant parties are free. And then that takes, and then you've got to look at that appeal process and the hearing and stuff like that. It takes a long time.
mm,
But in that time, the board will usually suspend you, so you can't fight in between. I'm not sure if they did that because that news hasn't come out yet, but that is what they would usually do. Yeah. But I'm not sure if that happened, obviously, because that kind of news hasn't come out yet. But but it doesn't matter. He retired anyway. Obviously, it's not a great look for the sport, and it's not
yeah,
ideal, especially in the current times where we've just gone through a horror case in October, which was definitely not good for the sport either.
mm,
Um, but I don't think it's fair that we slander the board, that we slander UCAD, and we slander Amir Khan, because really, no one really knows what they're talking about, if we're being honest.
yeah,
They read stuff and they hear stuff from people, and they just assume the worst. But you have to wait and see. Like, a lot of this has a lot of legal implications around it, and people can't just do what maybe morally the right thing is to do, you know?
mm, yeah,
So, so we just have to wait and see. But hopefully, Amir can clear his name if he is innocent, and hopefully, we can all move on to better news. Hopefully Crawford Spence, and
mm,
hopefully Fulton and Anue can get it back on, and Javonte Davis, Garcia. Um, like these are all good fights and good news for the sport. So
yeah.
hopefully we can get stuff like that, more positive things. So.
Mm. But let's move on to some of your fighters. Last week Joshua was talking about 3 fights he wants before he retires. He said Wilder, Fury, and your man Joyce. How confident are you, especially after Saturday's performance, that Joyce gets the win over Anthony Joshua?
Oh, destroys him in 8 rounds, 100%, 100%. That's not disrespectful to AJ either.
Mm,
AJ's a great fighter, two-time unified welterweight champion. Utmost respect for him. Olympic gold medalist, whether you think he deserved it or not, but he is one. World championship medalist, like a superb athlete,
mm,
who I just think isn't anywhere near his best anymore. And I don't know if he ever can get there. I think there's a lot of mental, um, not problems, Richard. I don't know what to say. I just think like mentally, he isn't the same fighter that he was.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I'm trying to get at. Like he's always scared about getting countered. He overthinks too much in the ring because you can see it. He doesn't want to commit with his shots, and you can see it. It's right there in front of us. And you fight like that against Joe Joyce, it's only going to end up one way. Joe Joyce is full of confidence right now, belief. He believes he can knock out anybody, and in hindsight, he can knock out anybody on his day. So we've got a big fight first. I don't want to trash talk Joshua
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah.
Focus on Joshua because Zilai Zhang is no foregone conclusion. It's a very tough fight. It's the first Southpaw in 4 years that we're going to fight. So that's a test in itself, not only a world level one that can punch very hard as well. So I'm really looking forward to that fight. And once that fight's out of the way, God willing, we get the win, touch wood. Then we will look at bigger names like the Joshuas, like the Wilders and the Furies.
Yeah.
And Usyk, if Usyk isn't doing undisputed with Fury, then that's another name that we'd look at as well. Bearing in mind that he beats Dubois. So these are all things that we'd be looking at. But I think it's really important that Joe fights one of the top four. By the way, I think Joe is in the top four. So whether I'd say top five, because I think AJ right now and Wilder are below him, in my opinion. So I think it's important he has one of those fights next, and I think it has to go. And I think you look, they're all calling him out now.
Exactly.
AJ calls him out. Whether he actually wants to fight him is another thing, though. Alex Krasik's been talking about Joyce a fair bit recently, and so has Fury. So Wilder hasn't really, but Wilder's a free agent now, and that's a fight we could definitely make. It'd be a mental for a non-world title fight, but it's just a massive fight, isn't it? Like a freak show fight, really, an absolute freakish fight. So, but yeah, any of those guys, man, I think it's important. But yeah, first and foremost, we've got to be Zhang, because if we don't, then we can say goodbye to any of those fights.
Yeah, but providing you do beat Zhang, I mean, what would you root for Joyce's next fight? Because obviously, like you said, he is in that top five, and the situation is all of those fighters, apart from Usyk, do need a fight. So
yeah,
in your as a friend and as a fan, which would you push for? Which would you like Joyce to have next?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Fury fight is surely the easiest to make, isn't it? Same broadcaster. We won't be unrealistic with money. Listen, we're going to get paid well, and we're going to make sure we're well respected. We bring a lot to the table too, but we're not going to be asking for 50-50 splits and things like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're realistic, but we'll make sure Adam will make sure Joe gets paid well, and then but that's a fight that could fill Wembley Stadium. That will sell it out on the same day. A massive fight. Two Brits, two proper fighters coming together, letting their hands go. And listen, in a lot of people's minds these days, like that's not a foregone conclusion for Fury either. That's a tough fight.
Yeah.
And if the only style that Fury's never come up against in his career, because it simply doesn't exist, is against someone like Joe Joyce. So, and I think that's a fight that really will catch people's imagination, because listen, he ain't knocking Joe Joyce out. And when you've lived a life that Tyson Fury has, it catches up with you. And you want to go in there against a guy that throws over 800 punches in 11 rounds in a WBO interim world heavyweight title fight, throwing more punches than some bantamweights and things like that, then you're going to be in for a hell of a fucking night. So, so yeah, I'm really hoping that can get made, and that's the number one target. Then obviously you've got then I would probably say it's Joshua, just for the needle, the British dust up, and I can put Joyce into stardom. And then obviously you've got Usyk, because Joe does want to be world heavyweight champion, and that's a nice little rematch from the amateurs too. Financially, it's probably not as big as definitely not as big as the other two, but it's still a great fight. And then Wilder, which is probably actually the third biggest financially out of all of them, because it's an absolute freak show. That would do a big stadium in the UK too. And that's just a mental 4-round shootout, isn't it? Yeah. Someone is getting it. Yeah. Someone is getting it. I believe it's going to be Wilder, but someone is definitely getting it. So it'll be a great fight.
Yeah, but I saw, I think it was last week, Big John Fury, he was asked about who he thinks Fury should fight next. And he said that he thinks that the Joyce fight would be meaningless. Do you see where he's coming from? Do you think it would be meaningless for
Mate,
Tyson?
he is honestly one of the biggest helmets I've ever seen in my life. Like, and I've got no respect for John Fury. Do you know what it is? Yeah, I've got so much respect for the Fury family. I love Peter. I love Tyson. I love Huey.
Mm,
I I love. I think Shane Fury is a very straight talking guy. He seems like a
yeah.
nice guy. I've met him a few times. I don't know him, but seems like a nice guy. Um, young Huey Fury, so Tyson's other brother,
Mm,
really nice guy. I don't really know Tommy too well, but all great people. But John's just about trying to get himself famous, getting in front of a camera, makes empty threats at people all the time. Say he's going to do this to people, meets Mike Tyson, shakes his hand, says how much he idolizes him, said he was going to knock him out before that. Snagged what he did to Carl Frampton, rude and aggressive to Carl Frampton
mm,
all the time. And I love Carl Frampton, great guy. That's a former unified world champion and
yeah.
two-weight world champion, and you're going to talk to him like that because he's got an opinion on a fight,
Mm,
which, by the way, was a close fight. And that is literally what his job is because he's a
yeah.
paid pundit. So, like, and even then, John Fury was saying how he was going to knock him out and stuff, and then just walked away. Like, I've got no respect or time for John Fury. All he ever seems to do is say stuff because he wants all the attention and media on him. That's my opinion. Um, at the end of the day, if you're calling Joe Joyce a meaningless fight, what is a meaningful fight then? You don't want to fight Usyk. You don't want to fight Joe Joyce. You're probably going to not want to fight Joshua because you had that opportunity in
Mm,
December. Then what is the meaningful fight for him? What is
yeah.
it to fight Chisora for a fourth time? Is that what he wants to do? I don't know what he wants to do then. What is a meaningful fight? Usyk's not good enough. Joshua's not good enough. Joyce is meaningless. Where you're going to fight Wilder
Mm,
or Chisora for the 500th time, but no one wants to see. Like, at the end of the day, no one wants to see that fight. So,
mm,
what is a meaningful fight? You're just going to keep him inactive and make him not fight then, and eventually
exactly.
get stripped of his title. Like,
Mm,
mate, like he's Fury hasn't got many years left because he's just getting older. And like I said, how he's lived his life. He should be fighting twice a year.
mm,
He fought in December in a glorified sparring match, and the reason why you didn't want to fight Joshua 2 weeks later was because you wanted to fight in February. Well, we're now in April, and you've got no fight scheduled. I don't even think you're in talks with anyone,
mm,
and there's nothing going to happen in the very near future. So just call that meaningless. It's just like crazy. And what does John Fury know about? Like he might know about holding pads if he even knows that, or like being an ex-pro or whatever. But what does he know about boxing these days? Like we don't know about how to manage people, how big a fight is, financial rewards and stuff like that. If you're telling me a fight that would sell out Wembley Stadium in the first day will pay Fury more than what you got paid for Chisora, um, meaningless, then he's delusional. But mate, he was only singing the praises of Joe Joyce and saying that's a fight they would take next a couple of months ago.
yeah.
So this is just another thing. Like it's just the hypocrisy of the whole team. And do you know what the shameful thing is? Tyson Fury was one of the most loved athletes in the UK and somewhat America as well until recently. And John Fury is part of the reason why that name is getting
Yeah.
dragged down because he is the most unbearable man. Not
Yeah.
only did he do that, he wanted to fight Jake Paul for a TV screen, like
Mm,
and and saying stuff about his girlfriend and stuff, and he's in his 50s. He just needs to calm down with that stuff. He needs to get real. Like I used to actually, and it's a shame because I used to like John Fury some years ago. I used to think he's a straight talking man, but he comes out with some nonsense and he just contradicts himself all the time.
mm. Well, the last question from me, mate. Where do you see yourself and Sjam'S fighters by the end of the year?
So I see myself leaving SRAM by the end of the year. No, I'm joking. I don't really.
Exclusive.
No, no, no. I see Joe Joyce being world heavyweight champion.
Mm,
I see Lerone being a top 5 in the world fighter. He's got some big news coming soon. Um, I see Florian Marku in some big fights. That's just kind of the route we're going with him at the moment. He's going to have a
mm,
comeback very soon, and he'll be in a big fight before the end of the year as well. Sol Dakers will be British heavyweight champion.
mm,
I see Guido being a top 10 in the world heavyweight boxer. I see Lisa Whiteside being a world champion. She fights next Friday.
Mm.
for a Commonwealth title against Tyson Gallagher. I see John Hedges being Southern Area or English champion. I see Johnny Fisher being Southern Area champion
Mm.
by the end of the year. Hopefully, this is my plan. This is what I hope.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not saying what's going to happen or that any of these fights are going to be made. I think else we've got my mind goes back sometimes. I see Tommy Fletcher.
Mm.
He's still only going to be doing. I think by then he'll be doing 8-rounders. So maybe I'm in his first a couple of 8-rounders,
Yeah, yeah.
and looking towards titles next year. And I maybe see. I don't want to leave anyone out now because I feel bad. Oh yeah, Junaid. I'll see
Yeah, yeah.
Junaid. I was actually only on the phone to him until 1:30 in the morning, but I'd see Junaid being an English light middleweight champion
Wow.
by the end of the year. Who else do I missed out? I've missed out. I can't be the whole stable. We'll just pretend it is a whole stable for now.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I maybe see a signing or two before the end of the year would be nice, and then kick on from there. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for now. But yeah, so I expect it to be a very successful year. We only have successful years at Sjam anyway,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
hopefully the success can continue.
Mm.
Keep growing the brand, keep seeing the fighters grow, and have some world champions. But I think realistically, we'll have one world champion by the end of this. No, sorry, two world champions by the end of this year in Lisa
Mhm.
Whiteside and Joyce. And I think next year it's very realistic for Lorraine to become a world champion if
Mm.
this year plans out the way we expect it to. So it'd be a very successful couple of years if we can do that.
Yeah.
But we'll have to wait and see.
Well, mate, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. I've been Lyndon Dixon. It's been Shane Watson, and we'll see you on the next one.